Hi, Nathan. Welcome to the episode 60 recap. Thank you so much for jumping right back into to record this right after we finished the deep dive for this episode. I really appreciate your time this week, and I had a lot of fun trying to wrangle this wild conversation around AI with you over the last hour or so. So thanks for being here.
You bet. My pleasure.
We we asked two different questions of folks this week. We said, is there an expectation in your organization that digital interface production will be done with AI in the near future? And then we asked, where in your daily work is AI too imprecise for your needs? And where is it failing you? And so we kind of gave folks just an opportunity to really share a lot of what they're working on, a lot of what they're thinking about. It was a fun conversation. We sent that out to 930 folks, got 95 responses. Nathan, what was your expectation going into this conversation? Like, where did you feel like this sort of conversation around imprecision was going to take us?
I anticipated that there are going to be a lot of people just objecting to AI because of how imprecise it is and how, in particularly design systems work, we want to be so perfect, or we want to be so high quality with the things we do. And I think some of the responses bore that out to an extent, but we did get into healthier discussion around spectrums of when precision matters or not, when it's going to impact our work in making systems versus other people using systems. And so there were some useful dials we were tuning to have productive conversations.
One thing that I was thinking when we asked this yes, no question at the beginning, I thought we would have a much more overwhelmingly yes on this. Most of the teams that I've talked to, their leadership is seeing crazy demos. They're like, this is where the future is. And I'm starting to wonder if we're sort of like on the down trend of that, right? Where like, okay, we were rapidly seeing all these wild demos people were doing. Everybody's thinking, I'm going to be behind if I don't get this going in my org right away. I'm going to start hiring AI people. I'm going to pass the mandate down, even though I don't know what that means, that we have to start using AI. All that stuff was kind of happening with the hype. And as people are starting to use these tools, trying to figure out how to put them into practice, maybe that's settling a bit. Do you have that sense at all?
I can only reflect on the teams and experiences I work with on a day-to-day basis. And some things that I observe are I see these spikes of growth with individuals where they start to use the tools, they're trying to solve a problem, and suddenly they speed up considerably. And they get excited about it, and they get a bit of a snowball effect, or rock rolling down a hill effect, where they start to gain momentum with it. And then I also see that's the minority. I also see a majority of people, they're simply not using it.
Hmm.
And so I remain uh, cautious, because when you ask a question like this, are people really answering on behalf of the organization, or are they answering on behalf of their own experience or their own potential future experience that they're having a tough time predict because they don't know how to use the tools. They haven't had a lot of experience with writing prompts or building flows, or whatever it is that they need to use the tools for. So am I surprised that a lot of people said yes? No, I think that that's an expected response. Do I think that we're on the downslope of AI hyper investment? Maybe, but I do think, I don't know what the curve is, but I think we'll probably bounce, and people will gradually start to accelerate in general their use of the tools and what kind of problems they can now solve with it. I don't think that's going to slow down, even if the hype train does.
Yeah. It's funny in the text responses to the question this week, there were quite a few folks who shared that they basically, like you're saying, they haven't had a lot of opportunity to experiment. And in some cases, that's even because the organization where they work has prevented that, right? Like for whatever security or personal information kind of, reasons, they just have not agreed to allow people to use that. And I was just 2 days ago on site with one of my clients, and they only now are getting approval, to start putting some of these tools in place. So I wonder how much of it has been some of that, in the enterprise space where folks, they're a little bit more slow to move into, for whatever reason.
I think permission and capability are two key things, and there are definitely relevant moments or organization types where those two things need to be constrained.
Hmm.
But I also think there are other limiting factors. One is awareness of how to uh, not just prompt, but create context, to add inputs, to go beyond. I took a screenshot of my Figma file and I fed it and it could interpret all these things. Or like to one step further, then I used Nathan's specs plugin, which like modularizes all the specs, screenshot that, put it in, and I understood even more things. You know, those things are both very primitive still. And so like I carry privilege is the wrong word, but I carry an advantage of being able to extrapolate and create models of data. And that's like totally speaking LLM's language, because they want structured data in a way to help respond to things. And so that's not a skill. I have that because I have a math and stats background, et cetera. I've done development. So I have that skill, but like lots of designers don't have that skill, or don't sort of reach for that skill by default because that's how their brain works.
I do think in the system space, at least design system space, it is maybe a common characteristic that folks in this space do tend to see the patterns. They see the sort of data in the design. I know that's not the case for everybody, but I know a lot of folks that I've worked with in this space do have that desire. They're not afraid of a JSON file or a YAML, front matter or whatever. Another thing I wanted to bring up that I thought was a really interesting part of the conversation was, I don't remember, I think it maybe was Taylor who kind of initiated this. And I think we were talking a little bit about, in scenarios where AI truly speeds up a team, what are we losing by having AI do a thing? In other words, I think he was getting at like the sort of struggle to solve a problem that a human goes through also makes them better at their craft in some ways, right? They learn those lessons and that makes them better in the future. And if we are relying on robots to do some of those things for us, are we also passing on the learning that comes with the struggle?
I think you are. And I think there's a threat there. There's certainly moments where I've been trying to model component data where I realize I thought I understood higher order models, and then I have to go back to really map out. I'll give you an example, like the presence or absence of an icon, whether or not it's optional or required, what content goes into it. And those are like three different dimensions of simply having an icon in a UI. There are more. And like suddenly they all start to have these different relationships, and describing that in data became very complicated. And I was like, why is this stupid icon thing so complicated? And so I had to go through that process that you're talking about to learn those things, and sort of emerge on the other side with an appreciation of a problem of a model I still can't keep in my head. And so AI could help us do those things or do them for us. But I also find that we're starting to get into higher order models. What's the relationship of the icon with its container and its text it's adjacent to, and how do you create combinations of those things and represent that structure in data too? And suddenly I'm working on like increasingly higher order arrangements of things, and I've left behind all these sort of primitive things to the AI, and that's okay.
Yeah.
For me. But the valid question would be, there's not an infinite higher order challenge to figure out as humans. You will reach a sort of a threshold, the page, when suddenly the AI is doing it all, and you're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a threat too.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like very, very simplistic examples from the past, like you and I were both running around in the world before we had cell phones, in a time before everybody could call anyone in the world from anywhere in the world. And I remember having tons of phone numbers memorized because I knew I might need to call home. I might need to do whatever. And that little bit of knowledge, I have 2 or 3 phone numbers memorized now, and one of them is mine. and so I think it's just a weird, we are okay culturally, it seems like, giving up that knowledge, right? And the friction of having to know that was created by the need, which no longer exists, and so yeah,
I
it's
think
interesting.
that's a great example. I don't even know my kids' phone numbers.
Yeah.
I've never known my kids' phone numbers. But I think where you need to like build upon that example is the speed of change of those things. Like that transition maybe took a decade, where phone
Yeah.
numbers ceased really mattering to people. And now we're getting to the point where change happens in a year or a month, or with in VS Code, like every other day there's a new release adding in more AI features, and so the rate of change is also something that's really hard to deal with. And I myself find that with certain kinds of change, I have a threshold past which I can't change any faster than that.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people are finding their own thresholds with AI and their impacts on their own workflows and so on. How fast can you really change and to keep up, or will you be left behind?
Some people that I'm working with right now are so excited about this stuff. They come to it every day with such good energy. And other folks, it tires them out for you to just mention the word AI to them. They exhausted by it. So
There's this perverse security that I have where I'm like, is AI going to take my job? And then I'm thinking to myself, well, at least relative to a lot of my teammates, I'm using a lot more than all of them are. Like, I'm trying to figure out things a lot more than they are. Like, I'm at least staying ahead of them. And it's such a perverse way to look at the world because they're my friends, they're my coworkers, and I'm not competing with them. I'm trying. And so,
yeah,
but these weird thoughts go through it because it is the change is so fast and the threat feels so existential to
yeah,
people and their way of life, that it really distorts things.
yeah. A question that we didn't get to in the conversation, but I just want to ask you, Nathan. I've heard folks compare sort of what we're going through right now with the advent of AI sort of disrupting our work. I've heard folks compare that to lots of different experiences that we've had culturally in the past, the steam engine or, like factories, right? So like these sort of core moments when an invention shifted the way we produced or consumed or whatever it may be. Do you think this is like one of those in that it's just another disruption and we will all figure out how to sort of work around it? Or do you think it's different in some way? Like, is there a sort of existential thing happening here?
Uh, I do think it's a disruption. I'm not a student of history to really answer this with a high degree of quality, but when I think about the steam engine, or let's say the spread of railroads across the United States, number one, it took a long time to lay out that railroad. Like reading it in a history book, it's like 2 pages, but the actual decades it took to connect all the cities with rail took a long time. And so from that, the pace of change was different. But then a different thing is that actually opened up the opportunity for people to have more commerce and to advance their own personal position, and as opposed to be replaced. And so the fear of replacement drives a lot of cultural anxiety. I'll just put it that way. And the fear of replacement, particularly in our work, designing interfaces, which seems to be the thing AI is better than everything else at, is writing programming code. I think that's real, and I think the disruption that other people felt and their ability to have a time frame to transition to something else feels more abrupt and could be more chaotic to our industry and our culture at large to cope with in the years to come.
Yeah. I struggle with this one because it's like these other sort of, inventions or moments in the past. It doesn't feel to me like looking at them retrospectively like they were intended to replace humans. But the entire goal of this is to essentially like replace the brain, like to recreate the human brain in some way. And so it's just interesting for me to think about the difference between those past moments and this current moment. Um, yeah,
Well,
hopefully
like
well, go ahead.
we're getting really high level
Yeah,
here,
yeah, it's okay.
but I wonder if that's the goal because I'd be like, man, the brain's limited. I don't
Hmm.
want to recreate the brain. I want to sprint. If I was actually working this problem, I'd want to sprint way past the brain. But also like what parts of the brain? The brains that make our hearts beat, the brain parts that make us feel love or attachment to another human being, all those other kinds of things. Like, are we training AI to do that? Maybe, I don't know. but that's not what I'm looking for out of my increasingly Luddite instincts where I want to turn the screens off, man. I want to go for a
Yeah.
walk in the woods. Like, I want to experience my environment actually and ride. My current thing is I ride every road in the county on my bicycle. And that is an inherently non AI thing. I have a deterministic map. I choose an area and I comb all the different lines, all the different cul-de-sacs. And so, from that perspective, like, I don't need you to replace my brain for that stuff. And
Yeah.
so, I don't know
Yeah.
if
Just
that's the actual
interesting.
goal is to recreate the human brain.
Yeah. I guess maybe it's like one step on the larger journey, right?
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that I was seeing when I looked through the data was this connection to sort of what, folks kind of, uh, folks gave us answers around where AI is working well for them and where AI is not in their current workflows, their current experimentation. And as I was looking through those, I was just kind of making lists of those things as I read through. And I kept seeing a pattern where, in the sort of traditional double diamond process that we talk about a lot in design, a lot of the things on the left side, the sort of diverging side, were ones that they identified as areas where AI is working, and a lot of things on the right side, the converging side of those two diamonds, were the areas where folks were expressing they were struggling with AI. I don't know. I know in the conversation, Nathan, you had an example for one of each, it seemed like, where you feel like there's potential for both. But do you agree, sort of at this moment, there's strength on the diverging side and a little bit more weakness or areas to grow on the converging side for AI?
I think it's easier to see the strengths on the diverging side as you're trying to generate ideas. You're trying to analyze broad swaths of context or data, and you're trying to synthesize things in a manner that AI is really good at doing. And so, seeing AI respond fast to those kinds of queries when they're structured well, or prompts, is really rewarding. But I do think that, and so an example that I have is where we're analyzing legacy code bases across platforms and legacy Figma assets in order to arrive at a new component that is based on new and distinct principles from how things were built in the past. And so AI is really good at that. It helps us get to a plan and converge on how we want to build and what the shape of the component is going to be. But I think it's harder to see unless you have a good grip on manipulating data and manipulating things with LLMs on how you can use AI to converge, to lint, to generate the actual shape of the component in the form of data and fill in all the blanks for you so that you actually have, if not the actual code that gets built and published to a registry or published as a Figma asset, you at least have all the details that you can transform into all those things. And I think AI is actually really good at that too. But that takes a much finer tooth comb to make sure that it's filling all the blanks the way you expect them to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good perspective. You just reminded me as you were talking that, like, the it was clear, I think, that the experience level using AI among the folks who answered varied wildly, right? We had folks answer who were like, I don't use it, and a bunch of people who were like, I've been experimenting for the last couple of years and I'm learning something new every day. And so, maybe that sort of like speaks a little bit to the answers as well, where the things that are a little easier, like you said, are the ones that most folks are kind of playing with right now.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's very true. And I find myself somewhere in the middle, probably
yeah,
beginner to intermediate range. Like, do I know what a prompt? I can write a prompt. I can create a chain of prompts. I can run them all at once. I can run them independently. Like, I can create workflows in order for me to accomplish a repetitive problem over and over. But then I hear from some developer I really respect that works at a company that is talking about, oh, we have LLMs that we feed a sequence back and forth from 4 different like actual developed application systems, such that after it goes through the 5th thing, it spits out this one thing, and that's what we use. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've built like these chains of things that I can't fathom how I'd even put that together. I don't know. Like,
yeah,
that feels beyond me. And then there are other people that are like, what's a prompt? Like, what does
yeah,
that mean?
yeah. It's real. The experience gap is huge right now. So
Yep.
I guess I'll just close with one question to you, Nathan, which is like, what is it that you think we should do with this data, right? Like, to speak to the other design system practitioners out there, our peers, right, who are working on this stuff every day inside big organizations or small organizations. Like, what's your advice for them? One or two things you think they need to be doing?
I think the first thing is find problems that are taking hours of your time and challenge yourself, even uncomfortably, to start using the tools to understand what problems you can use it for and what problems you aren't going to use it for. And then the other thing is be very wary of how you use those tools to converge on things that other people are going to use. Whether you're building experiences and other people are going to use those experiences, or you're building design system features that other people building experiences are going to use. And I think about, I live entirely in the latter. I just build design system features that other people use. I haven't designed an experience for a while. And so from that perspective, like, my stuff moves slower. It has a higher level of quality. And so am I going to use AI to facilitate steps within that process? Absolutely. Am I going to let it take over parts of that process as it can? Absolutely. But am I going to like withdraw myself and just say, hey, make me a badge component and hope for the best on the other side? No, that's ridiculous. And so how am I going to figure out, like, breaking the problem of we need a badge component to it's available in React, iOS, Figma, and Android? There's all sorts of steps that you can break down the problem into smaller parts and start chipping away at it and figuring out where AI is going to fit for you.
Yeah, that idea of work specifically, right? Like, find the small problem to solve first.
Yeah.
I think that's really smart. Okay, my friend, it's always great to chat with you. I appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for being here.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Ben.